Why do you think the government hasn't cut the number of migrants and has allowed it instead to go up?
Well, I don't think the government cares, frankly. I mean, this is a very big question you've just asked, but I think there's a complete not contempt, but there's a complete lackadaisical attitude to the importance of the nation state that is the United Kingdom. And I think it's a problem that pervades now right across Europe, the UK, and the US, where our politicians really don't give a damn about the social fabric of nation states. They allow, for example, Julia, I'm going to digress for a second, but they allow, for example, our language to be hijacked, our history to be trashed, our national heroes to be trashed. They don't really care about the nation state. They don't care about the homogeneous, harmonious society that we would be if we had shared values and we all came together in the way that the United Kingdom used to come together. And if you don't care about that, you use any kind of, elasto plan to fix the broken labor market that we've got. They don't care that they're taking in unbridled, unskilled mass immigration to fill a broken labor market that they broke because they don't care about the social fabric of the country.
But
If they actually,
is that because you think they are just totally unaffected by it? Because I'm very aware in the world that I live, people going, oh God, not so many Eastern Europeans coming here. You can't get such a cheap nanny or a cleaner anymore. They're Uber drivers or whatever. There are actually an awful lot of people who work at decent, high levels of the civil service or these think tanks or in government themselves that actually they benefit from all of this, and they get, cheap builders, cheap cleaners, cheap everything, or cheaper than it would otherwise be. And they just don't live with the consequences of this because they're not competing for the same appointments at the same GP surgery. They're not sitting on the council
no.
housing or housing association list. Then they don't send their children to the same schools. They make darn sure they don't, even if they're still using the state system. And they are just completely and utterly isolated and insulated from the realities that the vast majority of people in this country do have to live with.
Yeah, I mean, at its heart, mass unskilled immigration is a Ponzi scheme, isn't it? Because you get a broken labor market, you have GDP per capita that isn't rising, or GDP, frankly, that isn't rising, and you try to fix the problem by taking in more people who spend more money and admittedly earn more money, but they create a long tail of liabilities for the country, such as the ones that you've just identified on housing, on the NHS, on our infrastructure generally, on our schools. And, believe it or not, immigrants also get older and they become pensioners, and then they have to be supported. And so what we've got is a sort of ever increasing pool of immigrants coming into the country. As a result, I think partly because the government doesn't care about the nation state and social fabric of the country, fixes its broken labor market, ends up on this conveyor belt off which it cannot step without some serious re-engineering of the way our domestic economy works.
And also an expectation that the businesses pay a wage where they can actually get people. They'll say, well, we can't get any Brits to do it. Well, no, not at the wages you're paying, because if you can get someone to come and do it because they're living,
Absolutely.
10 in a house, and then sending money back home and things. That's very different from how most British people want to live. But also, let's face it, not only do we have a broken migrant policy, we also have, broken NHS, broken education system, broken training. We also have a broken benefit system because we know there are some 5 million people of working age, that there'll be people who have genuine disabilities, genuine illnesses and cannot work, and we should be giving them as much help as we possibly can. I was in contact with someone the other day talking about how he's having to give up work to care for his wife who was dying of cancer. And, and there is virtually no help for them at all. We need to be a caring, civilized society. But there are also an awful lot of people who, frankly, and I know and everyone knows, because we all know people who are doing this, swinging the lead. They don't want to work. They don't see why they should. They can get by on the benefits they can. And they are bleeding this country dry.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The gap between the net wage that you take home and what you can get on benefits if you're a working class, a median wage earner in the UK or below, that gap has to exist. There's got to be a significant gap. And we haven't got a gap between we haven't got a significant gap between what you can get on benefits and what your net wage is for the working class. And it's absolutely critical that two things are done. One, that benefits are controlled and policed more robustly to ensure that the system's not being abused. And then the other thing that needs to be done, which is so obvious to all of us, with the exception of Jeremy Hunt and the Prime Minister, is that taxes on the working and middle classes have to be reduced. You've got to take millions of people out of the tax net. Instead, he's frozen the threshold for the payment of income tax at £12,500 per annum, which by 2028 is going to suck in another 4 million people. Just get that, Julia. 4 million people more are going to be paying taxes that aren't paying taxes at the moment. What incentive is it for them to work if they can't keep the very small number of pounds that they legitimately work hard for in their back pockets?
Which already are worth less than they were a year or two ago because of inflation, indeed.
Absolutely. It's such bad
do you think
thinking
this
by
is
the
going
Chancellor.
to end up, whether it's stopping the boats or whether it's the illegal migration? Now people are waking up to those numbers, thinking the government. I mean, people said the numbers, the concern about legal migration went down, but that's because everyone thought everyone was on top of it, and it wasn't going to be becoming a big issue. It's back there. It's at it's the top of the list for a lot of people, as well as the NHS. Although we're told, oh, you won't get an operation in the NHS unless we have migrants. I mean, we're constantly. That's the deal.
I know.
Other countries seem to manage quite well, by the way, without having half their, a huge number of people, work coming in from abroad to work in their health service. We are unique on this. But do you think this is going to be a key vote decider at the next election?
I absolutely it is. And I think there is only one party to vote for if you care about the way our economy functions, vis-a-vis migration and the kind of third world economic model that's being practiced. And that is Reform UK, because Labour has exactly the same policies as the Conservative. Neither of them are going to cut taxes on the working middle classes. Neither of them seem to care about the social fabric of this country. Suella Braverman was absolutely right when she said multiculturalism presents an existential threat to Western democracy. That's not being hyperbolic. That's just recognizing the problem we've got. In the last 3 years, Julia, 3.5, we talk about net migration figures. In the last 3 years, at a gross level, 3.5 million people have emigrated from their countries to the UK. That is 5% of our population.
Yes.
That is a huge turnover. And by that measure, it also means that a very significant number, I imagine, of aspiring, hardworking, bright young British citizens have left the country.
Yeah.
This is not the economy we want.
Yeah.
We want to retain people who've got brains and well-educated and contribute to the creation of a first world economy. And we don't want to attract an unskilled labour that embeds and allows multinational corporations to effectively get away with abusing the workforce. I mean, that's what's going on.